Good morning. Nice and blurry. I'm blurry. What's that song by 21 Pilots? Blurry Face. Yeah. About his imaginary friend. Okay. Okay. Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is Sunday, December 29th, 6:48 a.m. 2024. It's cold this morning. My legs are aching. Oof. Bones are creaking. Whatever. So, real emotions. Really emotional. A lot of people I've been talking to over the last 4 or 5 days, I suppose since Christmas. Yeah. So, just the last week or so, a lot of people have been very emotional, like incredibly emotional, and mostly sad, which, is an authentic emotion. So it didn't hit me until yesterday. Oof. But I got sad yesterday. I got really, really sad. It's easy for me to trick myself, and I know trick is the wrong word, but it's easy for me to immerse myself in authentic sadness because I'm 68 years old. So there are many memories of sad events, and that sadness is authentic, and I could easily put myself there. Things that have happened to me. uh, yeah, gosh. And yesterday, the trigger for me, they got me bawling my eyes out, and I was crying. The trigger for me, it often is music, and a particular time in music, and the words, and the songs. I mean, so many sad songs about love, and about separation. So, but there it is. I mean, it's not about love, because love. I did a whole one on your love yesterday, or what I ended up talking about love and the Greeks, and the idea of why we're told that this is this and this is this. We have to discover it mostly for ourselves. But the authentic emotion of sadness that I get in myself, I try not to dwell in, even though it's authentic. You can stay in it. It's kind of like there's an option to be emotionally logic, and there's an option to be just straight up logic. Well, that doesn't work, so I'm not going to do that again. But the emotional logic is the one that talks to that part of you that's authentically in touch with all of the emotions. And there are many, much like senses, there are many, many, many emotions. But to get to that place of authentic sadness, often I need a trigger. People that are close to me being sad doesn't make me, encourages that sadness in me. So being around sad people who are constantly sad and emotionally sad is constantly triggering my emotional response, which is an empathetic one, which makes me cry. So it's really tough being around people that are in an emotional, sad state, even though it's authentic, even though it's real, And even though they need help and understanding, my personal belief is you have to help those you love deal with their authentic emotions. It's not to stunt their emotions, it's to have them realize that within those authentic emotions are also love and laughter and joy and abundance, all these other emotions that then they're closing down through this one sadness, authentic emotion. And I've been around some very sad people in very sad situations. Now I'm going to relate this to my journey and somebody else's journey, where you parallel play for a while, and it's really interesting because you fall for that person, you love that person, and they love you, and you're parallel playing. You're never really unified in a true sense. I know people want to say things like, "Oh, I met my soulmate," and it's like, yes, but your soulmate is a confusing thing, because once you get involved in pleasing them to please yourself, you may lose yourself. And this has happened to me, happened to some of my partners. But what I'm talking about is trying to find that wonderful place where you can parallel play for a while, and each other's emotions become kind of melded. It's like almost like they overlap on each other, and you can feel or sense that your partner is going through something very sad, or they feel you are going through something very sad. That is not a time for me to make that all important connection with them and go, oh. It is, in a way, to reach out with kindness, but also to remind them that even though it's authentic sadness, and we must, I mean, I say must because I believe that a lot of what we're stifling within ourselves needs to come out. But when you recognize that one's own emotions have a negative effect on the one you love, you must, it's time to have private time. It's time to have that time alone where you deal with your authentic sadness. I mean, if it's a negative emotion, and I'm not saying sadness is a negative emotion, I'm just saying that it's an emotion that spills. And I've had people spilling on me for a long time. And yesterday I had myself spill. I for some reason, I think there's a lot of medical problems with the mother of my beautiful children. She's having a lot of medical problems, terrible medical problems, mostly dealing with her own disability problems that have exacerbated as she's got older, but also dealing with an incredibly complex and ridiculous healthcare system, insurance companies, etc. It's just bleh. So all of that I felt. I mean, I've been feeling that building up in her, and last night I even though we're not together in any way, I just wanted to take her outside of herself. So I said, "Do you want to go out for, ice cream, whatever?" Just picked her up and we went out for an hour. Not very long, but I just wanted to get her outside of that environmental situation that put her in a state of perpetual emotional worry and concern. And it's although it's genuine, you could tell it was looping again. It's like it loops and it keeps you in its pocket. So if you get into an emotional state that you can't break out of, it's often better to interact with somebody, even if they're a person that is going to shake you out of it, not shake physically, but just like bring that part of you that is normally within you that deals with it, that's disappeared. Anyway, this is all very convoluted and also very personal, but at the same time, it's authentic. And I do believe that we're in, now I'm going to zoom out. I believe that everybody's having their emotional self mixed very thoroughly with their logical self. So it's emotional logic, which is a dangerous a dangerous concoction. And the media in general, but not just the media, entertainment in general is definitely pushing the sad button. Make them sad. And also the tradition, we have an annual tradition, this Christmas time, it's supposed to be a celebration of the birth of somebody. And here we are all thinking it's like, oh my God, it's not like it used to be. Oh my God, they're taking it away from me. I mean, traditionally there's all these things, and they're emotional, and then reminders of other times, All right, that's enough of me. Good morning. How do I feel? How does it feel to treat me like you do? Gosh. Bugger. Oh, my emotional triggers, mostly in music. Yesterday, I stumbled across, and it was stumbling across because I think somebody posted something on social media that was like, ooh, like Julian Cope. I'm a big fan of Julian Cope, even from Teardrop Explodes days. And, I saw Teardrop Explodes many times and in the 80s. But then what evolved out of that was going to be obvious to me, but it was going to be obviously a man of musical genius, because Julian Cope was, and I love this about his collections of music that were done on his behalf by his record company. I mean, the man was so drugged out, self drugged, but drugged out, that I think at the time of late 80s, early 90s, I think he was, I've read his books, he's genius, but somebody put collections together of his music, solo stuff, after Teardrop Explodes, which was a bit poppy, but it was good. But so it's the solo stuff. They put compilations together, and I think there's two. Yeah, well, pretty sure there's only two collections of kind of not rare, but it's a collection, so it's a compilation that somebody else put together, and it's called Flawed Genius, like flawed genius. and I think it can apply. I mean, having read his autobiographical books, a couple of them that were put together, he wrote, and reading the modern antiquarian because it's a shared interest. I did actually see him in Avebury Stone Circle, which is in the centre of England. Not the centre, it's in the West Country of England, whatever. But I used to live there, and he now lives there, and I saw him there. But I do think he has this insight into, I think he's gifted with genius, because anyway. So I listened to a thing that somebody posted a little bit, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. That was a time when I first started thinking about the genius of Cope, Julian. And so I went on a little search and came, and I thought, well, I'll listen to an album whilst I'm doing stuff. So I put an album of his, and it was the deluxe edition of Peggy Suicide. Now, I always liked Peggy Suicide as an album because it was definitely clearly a time when he was like going away from the more pop god into the more self-exploratory areas of life. And the whole thing just as soon as it opened up, I was like, whoa, and tears, and just really I was polaxed by this emotional wave. And it wasn't necessarily for me a go back in time nostalgic emotion. It was much more like here and now. So I ended up doing very little except sitting and listening to it and crying, which I thought, well, maybe it's time. Maybe this is the time for me to cry. So, I won't fight it. I'll let the emotion wash over me. And I sat there and I felt so much better having cried. And I tried not to focus in on all what made me in that place at that time. But now I can look back on it and go, wow, I know how that happened. I mean, sure, at the time there was an awareness of it being a trigger, but a trigger to the emotions, and the emotions bring memories, and the memories bring pain, and the pain is engulfing you, and you sort of like let it. Now, I've not been in a deep, dark depression for 24 years. The reason I've not been in a deep, dark depression for 24 years is because I have a very strong practice of self-discipline. It's a very, very strong practice of self-discipline. It's not that I'm not open to ideas. It's just I found a way for this human experience to deal with major emotions and notice when it's taking me down a slippery slope before I hit bottom. So I recognize that it's going there, and I'm like, oh no, then it's down there, and then oh no, and I try and keep that a very long, very wavy road, because I do want a real emotion. You see, I do want real emotions. I do want authentic emotions, but I have to recognize the ones that just drag me down. So for years I've been practicing, and now I've kind of got it down, the recognition of the slippery slope. You can feel it. It's just like, oh, woo, is that the black dog? They could give it names or whatever, and lots of good psychologists and psychiatrists, therapists, psychotherapists, they help people recognize, oh my gosh, yes, that's when I do this, or that's when I do that. And a lot of it's a trigger to the big one, which is addiction. And the trigger to addiction can be addiction to absolutely anything. But to me, it's like once you recognize the slope, it's like I don't want to put myself in that position where I'm seeking to escape it. It's like you can't really escape it, you just have to surf it. And again, back to the major lyrics of wonderful Julian Cope. Did a song called Safe Surfer. I've stolen it. I mean, I'm stolen it. I stole the line because I was writing a song not long ago, and there was a point in it where it was tonally a reminder and lyrically in the song that I'd written and was recording, where it was like, I'm a safe surfer, darling. It's like, and that's it really, isn't it? If you can master, and I don't mean cut off your emotions, because I've seen examples of that. A very close person to me, she has a way of just closing down, and then I have another one who's like immediately, these are the people closest to me, their way of dealing with emotions is literally the tiniest of trigger, react, and the other one, the tiniest of trigger, close down. So it's like the very, very extreme. I hope they will learn to ride the waves of emotion that will hit you if you're a human having a full experience. Excuse me. Oof, dry heat. I've got the heater on and it's in a small room and it's sucking all the air out. Anyway, that was a good one. That was a bit of a therapy session, but try and be authentic with your emotions. Try and be real, emotionally real. But as soon as you feel the negative results of your emotional roller coaster, as soon as you start feeling it, try and steer it back up, because we have a limited, I hate to say, I don't even like the word limited, but for this explanation, we have a set amount of time on this human experience, as far as I know. Why live it in the lower parts of your darkness, emotional darkness? Why not aim for the light? So it's like riding that roller coaster. It's very important that we understand what we can deal with, what we're able to deal with. I mean, I'm not able to deal with many things in life that trigger me into a darker, deeper place. But I'm lucky because I found a way of balancing out of it. It's kind of the scales of my personality, where I want to expand my senses so as I understand more of being human. But once I find out that those senses and emotions start going awry, I have to put them back in balance. Okay, so it's important for me. We get drawn into petty fights very easily when we're low. When our emotions are low, we get drawn into petty bickerings and fights, which we know are just, even when we're in them, we know are wrong. When we know that it's like, this is silly. What am I doing? Oh my God. It's like, don't get drawn into these petty bickerings and enjoy your life, because you get one good shot at it, and have a good one. But it's more than that. It's much more than that. It's allowing your full emotional self forward, allowing that to happen by avoiding the pitfalls, the dark ones, the dark people, the dark emotions. Don't interact with them. If it's a someone, or if it's a something, it's like, limit your interactions with them. If they're really making you, they're really influencing you to be worse off, then why do you keep doing it? I mean, this is, again, it's part of depression, is to keep repeating. Too many people, too depressed. Find your authentic emotions. Have a good cry. It doesn't do you any harm to have a good cry. But then pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and start all over again. It's good to start all over again. Restarting yourself with strength, with love, with unity, with empathy, with compassion. Restarting yourself is absolutely brilliant. Don't have other people restart you because they have an agenda for you. You restart you with responsibility for who you are and love for the world. Simple. All right. I love you. Gonna go. That was my own therapy for myself as well as for others. And I think that we're really, really exploring the deepest, darkest, and the highest, lightest, all at the same time. Deepest, darkest, highest, lightest, all of it. And we're bringing it into our personal space, and then we're bringing it out of our personal space into the world. All right. I love you very much. And that was a long one. Not going there. It's a dad joke. I love you very much. End stream. All right.